Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Kate Kavanagh. I'm the COO at AIM Group. We're delighted to welcome you to the webinar today. If you don't know who AIM Group are, we provide business intelligence covering automotive marketplaces, and we do that through our news, analysis, events, and consulting. And actually, since we last saw you, we've launched our automotive manual, so make sure to check that out on our website. So first thing, we want to say a massive thank you to our sponsorship partner, Kaiser, who are sponsoring our webinar today. And some housekeeping before we kick off. This webinar will be recorded as always, and you will receive the recording in a few days once we've finished editing it. Make sure you ask questions. You can pop them into the chat. So make sure you do that. We'll do our best to get to all of your questions today. And then it just remains for me to say goodbye, and I will see you at the end to wrap things up. And I'm just going to introduce now a short video from our sponsorship partner, Kaiser. Enjoy the webinar.
Welcome everyone. I'm Jonathan Turpin. I'm a principal with the AIM Group, and I'd like to welcome on stage my three panelists today, who are Anup, Steve, and Martin. Welcome, guys. Good to see you again. For those of you who weren't on the last one, this is a part two of something we've been doing. So can I ask you, well, first of all, to say today, we're going to look at how AI personal assistants could impact auto marketplaces. Can I ask you each briefly to introduce yourselves? Let's go in alphabetical order. Anup first, and then Martin, then Steve.
Thank you. Really delighted to be here. My name is Anup. I was with Cars.com, Cars Commerce, Cars Inc. for about 20 years, leading strategy, corporate development, partnership, analytics, among other things. And for about a year or so, I ran my own advisory and consulting services firm called A9I. Many of my projects, even though they don't start with AI in mind, they end up including AI somehow in reimagining workflows, product innovation, and it's the norm these days. So really excited to be here. Looking forward to learning from all of you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Schwarzman. I'm partner with OCNC Strategy in London. We do, in general, a lot of places around work on marketplaces, on strategy, deals, and many other special situations. I personally look more holistically across other verticals as well, in both media as well as in, let's say, e-com travel. So my role is fairly wide and helping companies really see how they can prepare for a fairly fairly clear part of the AI journey, as well as the one that's not very clear at all.
And Jonathan, I'm really excited to be back with this star-studded panel, and thank you. This is gonna be exciting today for all the participants. Hopefully, most of the folks saw us last time a couple of months ago, but this will be jam-packed for sure, and looking forward to it. My name's Steve Greenfield. I'm the general partner of Automotive Ventures. We're the preeminent early-stage mobility investor. We started a VC firm 5 years ago. We're on our third fund. We've made 48 investments in just shy of 5 years. And if you're an entrepreneur out there working on something across the mobility spectrum anywhere globally, we want to talk to you.
Brilliant. Thank you all. Welcome. So just before we start with questions, I'm going to lay out what we mean by AI personal assistants. We mean the next generation of chatbots that are focused specifically on consumers and help them with the whole range of things they do day to day. And in particular, the big difference from today's generation is the ability to go out and make things happen, both on the internet and in the external world in general. We're beginning to see a bit of that, but we're going to get a lot more of that coming. And think about the consumer focus in here. So I'm going to kick off with Martin, and I'm going to say, Martin, could you just tell us both when you expect AI personal assistants to arrive, why they haven't arrived yet, and basically how they're different from today's AI chatbots, or are they just a further evolution of those chatbots?
Thanks, Jonathan. I think you obviously touched on a couple of areas on what makes them special, what makes them different, right? So they plan ahead, they use tools, they have more context, but they're definitely fundamentally still grounded in similar things that you see with AI chatbots today, right? So they're going to build on what the internet has to offer. They're going to build on existing like thinking models and GPTs. They're going to build on MCPs and so on. So to the second part, well, when will they arrive? Obviously, there are already early versions of this, or let's say visions of that out there. I would also say that they're usually in the $200 a month tier, so they're very out of reach for the average consumer. But they're already, like, let's say the Comet AI browser, I think is one of the most compelling implementations. And then definitely, I would say Google is one of the leading contenders to do that. And of course, ChatGPT has their ChatGPT agent, which is trying to do something very similar. And if you want, the OG of all of that was the computer use part from Claude Anthropic. That was a very, very early version of this one. Now, this, like when you look at, let's say, the more advanced ones of this, let's say the Comet AI browser, $200 a month, useful but not consistently useful. I think everyone who uses them or has used them seen that this is actually it's a great experience. Can see the promise, but not quite there yet. So, in my humble view, this is 1 to 2, or actually more like 2 orders of magnitudes off. Given that AI is both in the many of the accelerations are dependent on compute capacity and efficiency and effectiveness of those models, and that it has to build on many other things. Most of the things can basically improve at around 1 order of magnitude, so 10x per year. There might be some bottlenecks that make this even slower, especially for general agents where they have to be very consistent around the internet, and there's some things that have to be solved around like the risk and security of those agents, because they're very prone to prompt injections. But in general, it's a good median bet to say around 2 years, we should be able to see meaningful AI personal agents in the hands of the average consumer on a freemium tier.
On a freemium tier, so absolutely free to consumers.
Yeah.
And
to some extent limited use, or like limited in some ways, but definitely, yeah, available.
Okay, so AI is getting these capabilities, but might we find that either for security reasons or because they just don't like the impact on their business, that websites, whether they're search engines, banks, news and information sites, marketplaces, whoever, simply block access to them? Do you see that as a technically realistic possibility, blocking personal assistants from using your service? And will websites even be able to tell whether you're an AI or the real human using them? And I guess the follow-on question from that is, are we in any case at a point where businesses can't afford to close their sites to AI assistants?
I think the last one, if I take the first answer on this one, the last one, like, do you want to block them, is probably the most relevant question here, because obviously this is genuine traffic, real intenders with real money behind that. Is just the preferred way of them exploring the web and using apps, oftentimes. So it's not necessarily another firm that's enriching itself on your behalf. It is just the way how users want to, like, the experience that users want oftentimes. Now, obviously, it has adverse effects on how much control, how much personalization a website or app has over you. So it's definitely not the most beneficial way. So the amount of bias you can input into the system, the amount of ads you can show for news publishers, for examples. So that all of that is a big problem. So you might want to do it for some limited uses. Can you do it? I think it is, like with Cloudflare, we have seen that they can identify at least the current iterations of agents very well. So the Comet AI browser identifies itself as an old version of Chrome and a couple of other things that don't look fully like a human, but it has a normal IP address because it's the user's IP address. So it might not be always the case. So it might be, let's say, the operating system, if it's an Apple or a Google device, they might pass it on. And in those cases, it's all about the user security, right? So Satya Nadella and in other words, obviously also Google have said that they will allow those personal agents as far as it doesn't impact user security and the operating system into like safety. So they will put it up to the user, and it's the user's choice if they want to use them.
Well, I read the warning recently on ChatGPT's agentic capability, and I ran away from using it very quickly. It sounded pretty scary at the moment, the security side. But okay, brilliant. Steve, it seems to me that a great personal assistant ultimately needs to be everywhere, on your phone, on your laptop, in your car, absolutely everywhere. Does that mean that this is going to be a winner takes most market? And does it mean that actually it's the big guys who own the operating system or who own search, i.e. Microsoft, Google, and even Apple, despite the fact they've executed so poorly up to now on AI, are going to end up kind of owning even more of our digital world? Or do you think there's kind of room for lots of different makes and models of personal assistant?
Yeah, my gut is the former. I think that we're going to eventually, to Martin's point, it might be a year or two off, but eventually really trust these things. So whether it's on my phone or something persistent on my desktop, and hopefully both across devices, as you said, Jonathan. Once we get to trust this thing, it learns about us. It can harvest our calendar, how we live our life, our lifestyle, etc. Then what's better? I mean, it's one thing to have your uncle recommend which car you might consider, but these things are intimately going to understand us, as scary as that sounds, and really be able to help us build a consideration set, help us negotiate. They're going to know where Martin or Jonathan are strong and weak with our negotiation skills, because they've seen evidence of that in the past, and be able to compensate for us. So I think that whatever chatbot, if we want to call it that, AI engine that we start to trust and becomes sort of integrated into our daily lives, is the one that we're going to rely on for a lot of our decision making, decision support. And while we're going to feel this tension that we'll explore today, that the marketplaces will have to stand up their own versions, I do think that what's a consumer going to trust? The ubiquitous AI engine that's earned my trust over years of use on my phone, or one-off where I go to a marketplace and start interfacing with a chatbot that's labeled the marketplace's name. I think it's going to be a real challenge for marketplaces to wrest away the trust and the usage away from whichever chatbot gets integrated into our daily lives.
Okay, and do you have a feeling for, is this a Microsoft, Google, Apple game only, or are other people going to be there?
Well,
in terms of offering chatbots.
Sure. So a good analogy in the world that you live in, Jonathan, is like horizontal versus vertical. And I'm sure we'll explore this today. Is can a horizontal chatbot ever get good enough around a vertical that's as complex as automotive, for example, to really be a good aid or not? And that could be something that's defensible to marketplaces, given they understand the shopping behaviors of a consumer that's in vitro looking for a vehicle at that time. But I think that these things will get really sophisticated very quickly. They will get trained with the nuances of automotive, et cetera. So I think it will be the big players that dominate. They'll have effectively unlimited capacity to invest, to learn these things. And again, I think it all comes back to trust. You think about the consumer journey. What's the consumer going to trust? Is it going to trust some new chatbot that I have not interfaced with before? I think it does lead to probably dominance by a couple of players. I don't know that there'll be a lot, but I think about Google paying Apple $20 billion a year to be the exclusive search engine on Safari. And there's some threat now that might go away. Apple has intimated that they might go build their own replacement for Google, however heretical that is. But these big players just have billions and sometimes trillions of dollars to throw around at research and development. And I think that they will inevitably get there to that position of ubiquity and trust with the consumer. Okay, brilliant.
So
can I add one quick thing? Sorry
yeah,
to interrupt, Jonathan. One quick thing. One frame I would offer is how a consumer is interacting with these agents. So whether it's happening at the browser level, at the level of a device, or happening in an independent chat GPT or a Claude interface, or it is sitting inside some website that you're familiar with. And then the second layer is, what are they doing? Are they just looking for information and delivering you a clean result? Are they actually completing a transaction on your behalf? Are they connecting multiple tools and setting appointments? And if you look at those two things together, I personally don't think it's going to aggregate into the kind of dominance Google has on search. I don't think that's going to happen for LLMs. Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
So Martin, come on in. We've got a debate. Let's go.
So thanks, Anup, and thanks for setting this up. That's an important context. I think that there will be new versions of control interfaces, how a human explains to an AI what they want, and how a human wants to consume what the AI has to offer. And they will not just be text in, text out. Now, who develops those? It almost doesn't matter, because the moment the dominant AI control interface is created, most likely via MCP, via agent-to-agent protocol, or just copycatting, they will proliferate, and everyone will use that dominant control interface. And the reason, for example, one thing that makes it a bit more practical is when I look at Google Shopping, so AI mode for shopping, they had dominant control interfaces. They had the view, how you identify, this is the catalog. They had a control interface that basically helps you search, which is very textual, so it's easy. They had a virtual try-on control interface. They have a checkout page control interface. So they basically had 15 different versions of the control interface already. And similarly for travel. So Google is inherently already there, right? You don't need much of an agentic version. Now, obviously, I think the existing control interfaces that marketplaces have in auto, they are good, but they're not AI optimized. And whatever the AI optimized version will be, most likely will be the version that the AI chatbot will seek input from user, will seek opinion from user, will seek output and decision, and then but will it be defensible is, I think, a question that Jonathan will ask.
Well, pause that. We'll come back to that, because that's a big question. So before we get to that, I just want to dwell down a little bit more on what these things are going to do. So I'm going to come back to Anup. Think about car search for a moment. Clearly it's all about data and other types of information. So how do you see personal assistants accessing this information? Will they just be searching the web and learning through the training they have? Or will they have direct access to dealer management and OEM systems and to the underlying data layers of dealer websites and marketplaces? Because, if I go to ChatGPT at the moment and I search for a car, I get back mostly marketplace results. I get back a few other things, because presumably that's the easiest way for ChatGPT to find things. But I'm conscious that we've got, was it A2A is one interface type. We've got ACP, Agentic Commerce Protocol. We've got MCP, Model Context Protocol. We've got even more sophisticated kind of interfaces on the way. And we've got, of course, all the traditional APIs and banking interfaces and all of that kind of stuff. So
and
I guess the question...
And the user interfaces itself, right?
All of that. So, I guess the question I have is, will our AI assistants need marketplaces to access well-curated data on car buying? Or will they, in time, just go totally around them and go to the root sources?
And I mean, like most things, probably all of them will happen at once at different levels of depth and sophistication. So simplistically speaking, if you think about the customer journey, you can think in terms of a discovery phase where somebody is trying to figure out whether they should even buy a car, what might be a good car, where to get it from, and so on. What does my neighbor drive and whatnot? Then you have a decision phase. You've figured out, yes, this is the car I want. I've kind of figured out this is the dealer I'm thinking of, and so on. Then the next stage is the deal itself, so actual transaction. And then a durability stage, right? So durability of the car, of the relationship, and so on. I think if you think in terms of the jobs to be done for the customer, the level at which these agents will come in will vary. So coming back to your question about whether the agents can bypass the marketplaces, we don't know what will happen in the future, but we have some examples to look back in the past. So think about Facebook Marketplace or Google's product listing ad or VLA's vehicle listing ads. There was clearly an interest in testing from large retailers like CarMax or Carvana. But for a long time, it was dominated by players who were aggregating listings from multiple dealers and giving one clean feed to these larger players. So I think I can't imagine that folks at CarMax or Carvana are not looking at OpenAI's product catalog feed specs and figuring out what are the things they want to publish there. But there are, at least in the US, 40,000 plus dealers, and they need help. And they'll probably come from the vendor community, either the marketplace side or the website and the marketing agencies and so on. I'm betting on the marketplaces if they move fast enough and do the right things.
So you don't think, there are going to be some people out there who are just going to say, oh, I can aggregate all of this out of the DMSs, out of the dealer websites, put up a feed that is AI native so that any AI can take it and, bang, suddenly you've got an alternative data set to the marketplaces.
I'm glad you asked that. So absolutely, even today, if you go, and I think there's a comment in the chat thread also about the current queries. Even today, you can use the agent mode on ChatGPT or Comet and ask it to browse across multiple sites and find the best car for you. But you're not doing any transaction. In many cases, you're not even submitting a lead, right? So the question I would raise is, of these 4 stages, discovery, a decision, deal, and durability, what are the kinds of things you can fully accomplish? I think discovery, certainly. So you will be able to find some automated methods for aggregating content. And these agents are fantastic at solving for constraints. They'll give you really good answers, right? But then what next? You will have to contact the dealer somehow. And is the dealer ready to receive that? And there'll be a time, it will happen over a period of time, but it may not be immediate. I think the stage that I'm most excited about, and I think it will resolve pain for a lot of people, is the ownership phase, which could be a really good entry point for all of these players to have that customer intimacy. So getting the oil changes automatically scheduled and placed in my calendars, right? Getting the recall notifications and making a judgment whether I should do something about it or not. Those kinds of things will happen fairly automatically.
So that will kind of suck people in. So, but in a way, I think you're saying actually access to the data isn't the key thing. It's how you use the data. Am I reading you correctly? And do others agree on that?
I would say, even if you look at and I'll speak for US, but it's happening in other markets too. If you look at the larger marketplace players, there are like at least half a dozen other websites. They have more listings than the larger marketplace players. So the access to listing itself has not been a problem for more than a decade.
But I'd argue that's down to network effect. That there's a fabulous network effect for marketplaces.
The consumers looking at it
in the current environment, but surely the fabulous future network effect is for personal assistants. Because they're doing everything, they know about you and all of that. Aren't we swapping one network effect for another potentially?
Possibly. What I would say there, Jonathan, is that it's a question of, we're saying that agents will do things, but agents are not going to buy car for themselves. They're not going to drive it around. I mean, not talking about self-driving cars, but so the question then becomes, who's driving the agent and what incentives are at play? So is it a pure consumer-facing agent, which is the best interest fiduciary of the consumer in mind? Is it coming from a marketplace? Is it coming from OEM or a dealer? And they'll have their own interests embedded in it, right? So I don't see this as like a one agent ruling all. It's possible, certainly for certain tasks it's possible, but the moat may come from the data about the customer than the network effect we're used to in media world, where there are more people on the site, which drives value of the services and so on.
Okay.
So the example that Steve gave, like a persistent agent which knows everything about you and can predict what you want, that would happen only if you have a lot of data about one customer in one place. Unless somebody is willing to make the data portable, which I don't see happening. I think they'll all hold it very close and say that they're not doing it because for privacy reason, but I think it's a competitive advantage.
Well, there may be some regulation at some stage, but regulation usually comes too late to tackle the real problem, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So either of the other two think that, does it matter that all the data is going to become much more accessible? Is it really actually not about the data at all? It's about how you use the data and what you do with it.
Like my take on this one would be, it's not necessarily about the data, but I think also as like reading what Anoop was saying, the second or the third marketplace has a real shot at this too. There might be new ways of recombining the value chain. There's a new emphasis on supporting the sellers and maximizing the value in whichever way this is possible, enabling them with technology, like doing revenue management better than it was possible before, right? So the value chain will definitely be recombined, even if we recognize the players. That's basically my ingoing hypothesis. And I think in like for this middle part of who provides the piping, this is not as winner takes it all as it was before in my read. In most industries, that is something I would recognize, because I think it's more winner takes all. What's the dominant consumer interface, the consumer bot? The ecosystem play is definitely a thing there, but they will use different piping. And if you believe the personal assistant controls the network effects, which I can buy into, that's a very flimsy concept, because they can just check the number 2 and number 3 websites too. That amount of effort is not a problem for them at all, especially if they provide a good AI optimized interface. Not a problem. So
okay,
yeah.
So this kind of segues on to another question. So, it seems to be really important is how are marketplaces and other businesses going to be represented within these AI personal assistants? So, in Alexa, we've got skills and you can install a skill. We've got app stores on mobile, etc. Is there going to be an equivalent of those within the AI personal assistants? And if there is, who will control the interface? Will I be able to say, I want to use AutoTrader or mobile.de for all of my car search, and then from that point, whenever I ask something about a car, I'm conjured up the service that I asked, or is it always going to be mediated between the marketplace and the consumer, with the AI always kind of sitting in the middle and presenting the results back? So which way do you think it goes, Martin?
I think the App Store concept is something that was one of the earlier concepts tried. So with the plugins that ChatGPT offered and so on, I think what is the current paradigm is the AI looks at instructions or in things that it has learned previously in other ways to figure out what is the right app to be used, what is the right MCP to use for this. It looks for the amount of context and reads the context and then executes against that with that context against some kind of tool, right? So I think an app in that is a bit unhelpful, because the app is a consumer concept where the consumer has to take steps, download this stuff. Whereas for the AI, we usually talk about context engineering, where it gets a pack of context from to use, let's say, mobile.de context. And mobile.de context will have, like if they have an API, or if they have whatever, the search API versus the book versus the like inquire API or other things, that will be learned this way. So it will assemble this on the fly. I don't think it's as rigorous. It's much more dynamic.
That sounds like the marketplace isn't in control of the end user experience. So, say I'm AutoTrader and I develop a really great discovery experience to help people find the right kind of car for them. Am I going to lose all control of the interface for that? So the way the cars are presented, the way people are questioned, etc. Or am I going to be able to go, from my personal assistant into the AutoTrader environment and have the experience the way they want me to experience it, rather than the way the personal assistant wants to experience it?
I think that's it's a good hypothesis to start from, saying like the ecosystem, the AI agent personal assistant ecosystem has more control over this. like there is obviously right now not a dominant version of how this interface is supposed to look like for exploring, discovering, like the phases that Anoop has mentioned. But it will most likely can easily like get a, let's say, set the ground rules for what is possible. Saying like, let's say for discovery, you have this amount of space. It has to roughly look like this. If you put ads in there, I will just bypass it and do something myself. Right. So there might be something that like within a limited framework, the AI personal assistant will set rules and you can do something within that scope. But it's not fully up to the incumbents to define the experience, that's for sure.
And so, can the incumbents then own the customer data that sits behind it and the relationships?
Well, that's a GDPR problem actually, because they need to give consent. They need to at least have the option to give consent, and the consent is kind of like if the AI agent is the one that's going onto the website, playing with the things and playing with the control interfaces, getting certain things back. That's not a given that the customer data and the part of searching will actually can be captured.
Okay, so there's a whole lot of complexity there. Let's pause that thought. Going to come to Steve, and Anoop said, we can divide this world up, and we often use a 5-stage model to describe car buying. We've got dreaming when you're thinking about your Ferrari or maybe what you're going to buy in a couple of years' time. We've got active discovery where you want to buy something, you want to understand it. We've got active search where you actually know what you want to buy. Maybe not in a precise model, but the parameters and you're out there doing it. You've then got the visit to the dealer almost invariably and the test drive if you do the test drive, and then you've got the actual purchase itself. So where do you see AI operating along that kind of process, and where do you think it'll be strongest? What are the things that it's going to be best at in doing?
Yeah, so I'll take that in phases, perhaps. Jonathan, you're the marketplace expert here, but marketplaces largely deliver a lead to a dealer and get paid in the process of doing so. And I think so that's where the biggest threat is potentially right now. Not a lot of marketplaces around the world, be it automotive or otherwise, are actually consummating the transaction itself, unless it's a pure e-commerce, Amazon like marketplace. So I think that the AI will figure out ways to build a consideration set at the top of the funnel, and then help you be a thought partner, sparring partner, to help you figure out which car out of this consideration set is the ideal car for you based on your lifestyle, and should be very, very effective in doing that. Far more effective than a marketplace is today with simple faceted search, which presupposes you've already done your research and you know exactly what you're looking for, and you just want to subject their universe of vehicles to a bunch of filtering criteria. The hope is that phase 2, and maybe this is like 2 years from now, to Martin's point at the beginning of the call, is that really that negotiation is where it gets powerful. If I can take my chatbot and say, look, the most painful part of this process is ultimately the 4 hours at the dealership, where I'm having to, this very, very complex, interdependent sort of like calculus that I have to do with down payment and how much cash I have and what my budget is, and if I have a trade-in, how much equity I have in the trade-in, and can I qualify for incentives, and then is the car in stock, and if not, I can't afford this car, what are the trade-offs between a couple of different cars, and then back and forth, and then at the very end of the process trying to sell me insurance and protection products that I didn't ask for, but suddenly they're being shoved across the table at me. I think if I can outsource that, or at least at the very least have a persistent AI companion that sits with me during that process and is listening, with an omnidirectional mic to the conversation, and in real time providing feedback, right? Very smart feedback to me, like, oh, don't accept that parameter of the deal. We can do better elsewhere. Ultimately, this will manifest into like fully outsourced negotiation. And so the marketplaces really have to think through, if our business model is to either provide a lead and or pay for prominence for a dealer largely, to monetize getting the consumer to the point that the consumer has decided that's the dealer I want to go to, that you're going to be competing with AI chatbots in that area. But there is this new area, that maybe dealers have to be more concerned with is like, does the AI chatbot wrest away a little bit of the negotiation leverage that I have, because it's going to be arming consumers with the best practices around negotiation in the world and be able to sort of virtualize those digitally. And we may find very soon that the dealers are craving marketplaces to help them, to Anoop's point earlier, with more tools to be able to facilitate
that negotiation
and or gain some sort of advantage. I don't want to negotiate, I'm a dealer, against the best FBI negotiator in the world, which effectively is going to happen. Right now, dealers have a huge advantage over a consumer because they're professional negotiators. But now, you're going to really give an armament, right? A full arms cache to a consumer who's going to be able to do a lot of this stuff digitally. And the dealers are not going to be prepared for professional negotiators. Every consumer now could potentially be a professional negotiator because of this little device they have in their pocket.
So I think you're saying,
one connected point I want to add real quick to what Steve said, that's really, really valuable. If you look at car shopping in US over the past 2 decades, there was a time when a consumer would go to 3 to 4 dealerships looking at cars, comparing deals, and so on. And as the internet shopping or marketplaces and quality of websites improve, that has come down to maybe 1.2. So consumers are basically going to 1 or 2 places and doing the deal. I feel strongly that the same might happen to the web destinations, because the consumers will stay within this AI environment, the agentic or not. And that's a real risk, because if consumers are not even going to the marketplace websites and the attention is completely reallocated, how do they make money? It's a risk.
Well, so it seems to me, I mean, taking what Steve said, at the moment, the biggest area where AI personal assistants will get into first is discovery.
Correct.
Which is not the strongest area of marketplaces. Marketplaces are a big part of that, but discovery happens in a much more interesting way. And it seems to me that discovery then leads to search. So the risk is that if you lose discovery, you then lose search, because one flows into the other. And my logic is that, therefore, as a marketplace, you want to really focus on creating a great discovery experience early on. Does that make sense? And then I think, Steve, what you're saying is actually to really maintain your value over time, you need to become the specialist in transaction, but in a kind of AI-oriented transaction way. Is that a kind of summary of what you're trying to say? And have we got 2 different strategies, one for the near term that is own discovery, and one for the long term, which is really get yourself deeply embedded into transaction?
Yes, I think you've articulated it very, very well. I think I can only imagine the marketplace leaders that are on the call today that are listening in are like, yeah, but Google was the existential threat. They were going to aggregate all the cars and provide an experience that was going to shorten the consumer shopping journey and prevent a consumer from having to get in and poke around one of my marketplaces. And that was all overblown. And I think we'll see how this evolves. There's a threat there. And to your point, I think, Jonathan, you just said it very, very well. You have to provide a compelling reason for a consumer to go to a marketplace, to build their consideration set, and then walk them through how to winnow down or narrow down that consideration set to the ultimate car or 2 cars that I actually want to now go figure out if I can buy. And we can acquiesce and give that power, rest that power away to the chatbots, because they're going to vie for this. They're going to try to provide an experience that allows a consumer, through this kind of iterative sparring partner that is well trusted, getting them to build the consideration set, and then very quickly getting them down to the 1 or 2 vehicles that they want. And if the marketplaces lose that position, they're at great risk of then losing phase 2, which you talk about, Jonathan, which is like the negotiation area, which I think marketplaces could uniquely provide a position there, because this is when things really get complex. Like the complexity of discovery and consideration set building is rather simple. I mean, there are only so many permutations, and you could conceive of a dramatically better, consumer experience that's powered by AI bots. Getting the actual negotiation done is the reason why almost all transactions globally take place still at a dealership. That experience has not been digitalized. There aren't marketplaces that consummate car deals because it has so many facets and interdependencies and back and forth and iterations. This is where the AI chatbots could be super effective and be very, very disruptive. But at the same time, I mean, to Martin's point, we're a couple of years away from that potentially happening. But this is where a longer term, you've got to be thinking about, like, how are we going to be able to influence and or control the negotiation and the consummation stage of the car buying journey?
Okay, so unfortunately, we're pretty much out of time. So I'm going to ask you one more question each, a quick fire question, which are, what are the 2 or 3 things maximum, very quick fire, that marketplaces should be doing now and in the near future to make sure they're in the right place? And then I've got one more question after that. Go.
Yeah, so I would say the battle for dreaming and discovery is lost for marketplaces. It's a part-time thing. Consumers do it over a period of time. And I think the horizontal chatbots will win that. So the best marketplace can do is utilize these LLM technologies and provide a good experience, but understand that many times consumers will come prepared with whatever the chatbot has told them. So go deep into the decision and the deal side, and do everything you can to keep the customer while they're in that durability phase of a relationship, because otherwise it's risk. Do everything you can to protect your media business. That'll be at severe risk because consumers are not going to spend time on your site.
Okay, Martin, very quick.
Very quick. So I think there is an option for a big bet. I think many marketplaces are not prepared to make that. And I think today we haven't given enough evidence for why you should be doing it or not either. But the big bet would be you build an agentic experience, an agentic first experience for this whole process, as deep as possible and as early as possible. I think that is one option to do, and I'm not sure if it's going to succeed, but it's definitely, I applaud those who try it. And they think they will have an advantage at least for a couple of quarters, if not years, ahead of the general horizontal agents. And the other one is the pivoting to serving the demand side more holistically and better, all right, which is also going in the direction that Steve said, to basically given an edge, given that there are buy-side agents now in the environment. Even today, they're just very, they're not great because they're text form. So pivoting to the sell side is pivoting to the business model, something that you can't easily test and learn. And it's potentially something you have to pivot the way how you make money. So there's other ways how you create value, but the new business model is the thing that's hard to discover. And that's I think the other play to look at.
Both
short-term plays here.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm with you on the first one. I think marketplaces should be building a really great discovery experience. I'm not with Anoop on that, I'm afraid. Steve, where's you? Where are you on the top 2 things?
3 things. So one is, from a strategic standpoint, this has to be your number one concern. Make sure you're allocating your best and brightest to this, because while the base is small in terms of the amount of traffic that's coming to your site right now from AI chatbots is small, it's growing very, very quickly, and extrapolate that line out after a couple of years, and it could be a significant proportion of your traffic. So don't ignore it. Don't put your head under the sand. 2 is, it would be a really bad day if your competitor in your market announces that they have a strategic relationship now with OpenAI for data sharing and experience sharing, and OpenAI, for example, is powering a chatbot in their experience. So be there first, be open-minded, and think of a co-opetition, right? It's worked well in the past for a number of large companies. And then number 3 is, marketplaces have dominated because they've had the data. And I think just think about your data strategy and how if you did a 2x2 matrix and said, quantity versus quality, focus really on the quality of the data that you have, and make sure that you continue to be a must seek out destination, and that OpenAI could never, reach around you and bypass you if you have a certain amount of critical quality data. I don't know what that data strategy is. You'll know better in your local markets, but make sure that you can compete vis-a-vis whatever OpenAI is going to be able to get elsewhere, and you just have dramatically better data.
Okay, thanks. Last quick question just for Steve. We've got a raft of sales of auto marketplaces coming up with the breakup of Adevinta, including the horizontals that are very strong, number ones often in automotive. Are we going to see the same kind of multiples for those businesses, or is the risk that there is in the market from AI going to devalue those businesses?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is the $1 billion or $1 trillion question. It's premature to declare that there's an existential threat to marketplaces. I don't think in the short term you're going to see any impact to multiples at all. But we're already seeing that on quarterly earnings calls, analysts are bringing these questions up, as they're going to across every vertical, not just automotive or verticals, but any marketplaces. So you got to be prepared. Obviously, CEO and leadership has to be prepared to answer these questions, what strategies you're taking, that you really understand the problem, et cetera. But the short answer is no, I don't believe anytime soon suddenly multiples are going to start to correct as a result of this threat. But at the same time, longer term, unless you can really articulate to analysts that are covering your stock, or private equity folks that are doing due diligence on your company, you're going to have a very, very crisp, clear strategy for how you're going to counter this and embrace this longer term.
Brilliant. Okay, we need to go to our presentation from our partners. So we're all going to go off screen. Henrik from our sponsorship partner, Kaiser, is going to give a short presentation. And we'll be back in 2-3 minutes to answer people's questions. So see you in a moment.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me. At Kaiser, we work with Europe's leading marketplaces, OEMs, and dealers to create exceptional buying experience from the initial lead and down the funnel to the eventual sale of the car. When we work with marketplaces on increasing funnel performance and conversion rates with the help of AI agents, we look at an evolution across 3 categories, you may say, of agentic AI products. And today I wanted to give you just a brief few concrete examples from each one of these categories. And the first category is AI-powered personalized engagements to improve customer experiences and drive more conversions post the initial contact. Imagine this example. The initial call between buyer and seller resulted in a test drive on Thursday. The buyer mentioned the reason she was looking for a large SUV was that she has 2 dogs who needs to fit in the car. And using AI to understand this context from the call, we automatically send a text message on the Thursday morning, reminding the buyer of the test drive to bring driver's license. We share the Google Map link with directions and say, I hope to see your cute dogs in the store today. This kind of personal touch drives show-up rates significantly. And then we have the second category of various use cases where AI agents actually respond to and manage leads. Here there are many different use cases, but let me share just a few quick examples. Example 1 here, make sure no phone lead goes unanswered. An AI answers the phone, asks qualifying questions, and answers the most common questions the buyer has. It tries to schedule a test drive, and obviously helps dealers with the all-important speed to lead metric, which has a very high correlation to conversion. Example 2, along the same lines, but for the forms channel. We help dealers call back a form lead instantaneously as the form lead arrives at the dealership. Again, answering questions and driving to a successful appointment booking. Again, speed to lead, but this time in a channel where response times are often still dreadful, given the importance of responsiveness. And a third example, and this is a use case that enables marketplaces to deliver more high-quality, rich leads to dealers. Many marketplaces has both a forms and a phone channel for leads, and the form channel lead often includes information like financing needs and trade-ins, but the phone channel is in its nature much less rich. The marketplace is therefore inserts an AI agent at the beginning of the phone call to collect further information to enrich the lead before passing it on to the dealer. These are just a few examples of agentic use cases in the early part of the funnel, the intersection between marketplace and dealers. There's a lot more of these examples and a core focus of ours. So if anyone's interested to learn more or share experience, just ping me afterwards. And then lastly, to wrap up and tie back to a lot of the great conversations today, we see a third category in the evolution into the future then when dealers need to handle all these buyers, personal assistants, and their agents, and when they have started to play a larger role. So when ChatGPT agents can go out there and source interesting objects and even reach out directly to dealers to inquire about availability and the condition of the car and the price and so on. And one fairly obvious consequence to us is that dealers will start to be flooded with exponentially more low-intent leads or inquiries. Where a human today may contact 2 or 3 dealers about a certain make and model, an AI agent might contact every single dealership in the country that has an ad for the same make and model to find the best option. And the natural defense for dealers then is to have their own AIs for AI to AI communication that handles and screens these initial inquiries, and with time can do more and more things like not only answering the questions about the car, its availability, scheduling test drive, but interestingly, negotiation of prices and other add-ons like was discussed before. So at Kajsa, we're working with marketplaces across Europe at the moment on bringing these solutions to their customers, their dealers. We believe that marketplaces have a great opportunity to create and capture more value for their customers by packaging and offering these kind of agentic AI solutions. And by doing so, I think AI agents can be an ally more than an enemy to both marketplaces and dealers for the foreseeable future, let's say. Jonathan, back to you.
Thank you, Henrik. Why don't you join our panel, and we'll bring everybody back on stage, and then we'll get on with answering people's questions. So first question I'm going to pick up, why wouldn't large dealer groups build their own agentic experience and bypass marketplaces altogether? Maybe kick off with Steve on that one.
Yeah, I think the same reason that they haven't built third-party marketplaces themselves in the past. It's one is the scale and cost and complexity, and 2 is consumers or an AI chatbot want comprehensiveness. They don't want to look at a keyhole and only get a sub-segment of the inventory in a marketplace. So I think the same logic applies here. I don't foresee that we're going to see dealer groups individually building. They would be outsourcing to a third-party vendor that would provide that for them in a white label capacity.
Okay, brilliant. We're going to leave that one there. There's one in here, I've lost the question, but I know it's here, which I think plays to something Martin was thinking of talking about, which is, can a specialist marketplace build a specialist experience that is better than the generalist chatbot experience in terms of marketplace capability?
It must be true. Definitely in the short term, they would definitely they have a business model that is advantaged, right? Because obviously you have a generalist agent that needs the specific context, needs to figure out which APIs, MCPs to use, and then needs to have better control interfaces and all that kind of stuff. So definitely you can get there first. You can get there also while it's more expensive to do that. Let's say this experience costs you a couple of cents and something that the freemium experience could not afford, but for a marketplace you can do that because it's definitely within the budget. So it must be true, but then it's basically the only question is the defensibility. So I would this is a project to be done basically, to look at the pros and cons, look at how far can you be ahead. Do you have competitors in the market that are advantaged or similarly positioned to you to do that? And what would that mean? Because obviously it's not just one marketplace versus AI, it's a competitive dynamic. So weighing that all off, I think it could for some players absolutely make sense to pursue that. And one aspect that we haven't talked about much, but it's going that way, is it gets cheaper and more likely to succeed the further we go down the AI journey. So with time, basically, if you wanted to try that a year ago, the chance of success would have been close to 0. If you do that today, maybe it's a 25% chance to succeed within a reasonable budget in a certain time from now. If you do that next year, it's probably over 50% chance that you get there, or much more than that. But yeah, it will get cheaper, therefore also easier for competitors to do that.
So that's a traditional risk, isn't it? That you leave it to get easier and easier and easier, and by the time you get round to it, your competitors have gone and done it.
Exactly.
So, okay. So sorry, just sorry, I've just lost. So on the dealer side, again, should a dealer make its inventory, a dealership make its inventory available to AI, or should it rely on platforms? What can it do at the moment to make itself visible on AI? And as it only has kind of technical data on cars rather than necessarily contextual data, how can it create a great kind of AI experience?
I'll take that one. All of the above. So just like we saw at the beginning of Google, SEO was very important to make sure your data showed up, and you thought about organic search. You should be thinking hard about organic search for AI chatbots. You're not going to do this yourself. You're going to have to rely on your vendors. Start with your website provider, be that a marketplace or not, and lean on them heavily to make sure that they're providing you evidence that your inventory is showing up on AI chatbots. I suspect that we're going to have a whole cottage industry around AEO, AI engine optimization instead of SEO, and you're going to hear that buzz term over the next 6 months to 9 months for sure. But dealers should be thinking long and hard as a small but greater percentage of their traffic to their website is coming from AI chatbots, how to make sure they're presenting their data in such a way that's ingestible and findable on these AI chatbots. And I think you're going to have to lean on your third-party vendors to do so. In some cases, the marketplaces may offer you that option as a feature, but quite often I think it's going to be your website provider.
Can I just ask?
And practically speaking, one quick thing, Jonathan. Practically speaking, today for Google at least, you can't risk blocking it because you still need the organic traffic, even though the chat referrals are small. So
yeah. Can I just ask Henrik, how are you seeing dealers at the moment actually dealing with the AI threat?
I think
or opportunity.
Yeah, I think that there's opportunity there. I think the vast majority of dealerships are not very mature at all yet. And then there are these kind of few startups that are more tech companies than car dealerships, perhaps, that are really managing to take advantage of a tech-first approach. We have an example in Sweden where I can't disclose exactly who here, but they have managed to get the marketplace traffic down to like 30% of their used car incoming. And, but they are unique in their world. But they have been really successful in figuring out ways to drive traffic. So there's opportunity for sure, but I think the most car dealerships are not tech companies that are not expert in this. And I believe Steve is right in saying you have to lean on some vendors here to get it right.
Okay, brilliant. So next question, which kind of follows nicely from that, is do we mostly see AI agents supporting car buying or also car selling? And how would that impact marketplaces and dealers? So I'm going to shoot that one at Anoop. We've talked a lot about the buying experience. What about the selling experience? And what can marketplaces and dealers do in that area?
Yeah, so if you think about transaction, yes, of course, there is this technology aspect of finding the perfect algorithm to solve a math problem. And there is this pipeline connecting, transferring data and decisions. But the two biggest areas that are hurdles are regulation and human behavior, right? So while the consumers adapt with this fragmented landscape and come up with more informed ways of talking to a dealer, I think there is a lot more happening on the dealer operating system side, which is taking advantage of AI. So the most common ones, there are at least like a half a dozen AI receptionists, which are taking phone calls and improving efficiency. A lot more happening on how follow-ups happen. So AI-based messaging services, email services, lots of analysis happening at dealer level on what inventory to stock, a lot of advancements happening in using CRMs more effectively, a lot happening in media buying, so becoming more AI-enabled there. So there's a whole range of things that will improve the dealership operations on how they sell. Absolutely, that's going to happen sooner than even the consumer behavior change happens.
Okay, and for marketplaces, is that an opportunity, or is that really going to be specialist providers and people like Kaiser who really do well in that space?
Yeah, I think most marketplaces are no longer just marketplaces. They're all doing other things to help sellers. So in that sense, they are the vendor enablers for the dealers. And players like Kaisa can help either the dealers directly or in partnership with marketplaces. So they need specialist technology to deliver those integrated services. They can't develop all of these things in-house anyway.
Sadly, I think we have to wrap here. So we've hit an hour. I think we could all speak about this for another hour, but that cannot be. So thank you very much to Kaiser. I'm going to welcome, I think, Kate back on stage to close us down. Thank you to my panelists. Really appreciate you being here. We will speak soon.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, the conversation could definitely have continued longer. No matter how much time we have, we never have enough. So final things, just thank you to Jonathan, great hosting today. Thank you to Steve, Anoop, Martin and Henrique. Thank you to our sponsorship partner, Kaiser. Really fantastic webinar today, guys. Well done. And we will see you, we'll send you the webinar recording in a couple of days. Connect with the lads on LinkedIn. They'll be delighted to speak to you. And we'll see you in Spain next year. So thank you very much and have a great day.